All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of Let's Get Banned. I gotta be honest, I missed doing all of this, so truthfully, let's jump right into it. So, the title of today's episode is called Harnessing Lockheed's Discoid X22A and How the Galileo Project May Exploit the Dark Forest Theory. So, we're gonna be looking at a few different things here, but first, let's understand what the Dark Forest Theory is. So, first off, let's take a look. This is according to learning-mind.com. So why is the dark forest theory so frightening? Because it suggests that there is alien life out there, but it is hostile. In fact, it is staying silent for a reason. The reason is this killer alien species wants to end human civilization on Earth and take the planet for its own species. End quote. Now, there's so many things I'd like to delve into here, particularly because I have my own variation of a theory of this dark forest proposal. With that being said, though, I want to make something else very prominent and significant before going on. So let's take a look at the way in which time is allegedly understood at a secretive level. Now, of course, I'm not a physicist, let alone a quantum physicist. I don't understand any of or most of this. With that being said, if we look at consistent whistleblower testimony, and I guess you could say, research and video footage and things like this, every single former contractor, military personnel, engineer, scientist, general, you name it, has said the aliens have taught us to insert the missing formulas in the equations of things like, Einstein's E equals mc squared and things like this. But the main point is that time and space, or more so time, is constantly one focal point. And I don't want to sound like I'm just, blabbering off and not knowing what I'm speaking about, but more so this. Think about how they bend time, right? So, for example, if we were to take this piece of paper right here, right? If we took this paper and we said, okay, we want to travel from here to there. Normally for us, using a plane, a car, you name it, or from a scientific perspective, we would think, okay, we have to go linear, right? But if this is the fabric of the current dimension or universe that an alien or us are in, what happens if we can bend that one point to meet us, right? And so this should not only be thought of or applied, in my opinion, to the way in which UFO craft and time travel tend to work. What I'm trying to say is that this, in fact, may be a way to look and perceive at honestly life differently. And I'm going to be honest with you folks, I'll tell you something very personal very quickly. One of the ways that I was able to sort of get over this sort of mental depression that I've been going through, it was understanding and telling myself that all points of time are equal. Because one of the issues that I personally had was anxiety and thinking days ahead and getting nervous about things that haven't even happened yet or things that might not even happen. But perceiving time in this way helped me calm down a lot. So the reason why I say that, folks, is because let's take a look at this right here. And I quote, "When explorers set foot on the new uncharted territory, they do not acclimate themselves with the local people. In fact, if they consider themselves to be more civilized, they take over the land and the rights of the indigenous people. Here are 3 reasons why experts believe in the dark forest theory: survival of the fittest, limited resources in the universe, and other civilizations are keeping quiet to survive." End quote. Now, I bring this up because if we take that example of how time could be brought towards a certain point, who is to say that that hasn't already happen in some type of multiverse or alternate dimension, if you will, and that not all, but some of the more hostile or negatively intentioned extraterrestrials that have been visiting this planet, in their perception of time, they're actually heading to the past. So we cannot rule out the fact that, I'm not trying to fearmonger, but we cannot rule out the fact that these extraterrestrials may in fact have some sort of I guess you could say goal of domination. As if you check out the second or third Let's Get Banned episode right before I took about a month off, you'll notice that we talk about and cover a story where certain reptilian extraterrestrials were telling a certain gentleman who was preserving trees within his vast amount of land that he owned that there needs to be a form of depopulation or population control. But that gentleman later found out that these reptilians were saying this because it was part of their agenda and their intention. So we don't know ultimately what the end game is here. And when we start factoring in multi-dimensions and time and space and things like this and the perception of time, look, a lot of these aliens could be friendly, but all it takes is one negatively intentioned, at least towards us in our perception, or one sort of hostile race, if you will, to not be controlled or curated, and they start, bending the fabric of time and space and things like this, as I'm sure there is some type of control apparatus in place. But anyways, Let's move on. And I do have to say very quickly, there's a Star Trek Next Generation episode that reminds me of this sort of dark forest theory, except, of course, the Starfleet was surveilling a very primitive species for the sake of pure surveillance and studying, right? Which is what I would like to think is the case with us in reality. But again, we cannot be biased just because it favors a certain, positive outcome, if you will. Anyways, howandwise.com. USSR general claimed Soviets learned to attract UFOs and made a contact with them in the 1980s. Anyways, I'm not going to read the whole, I guess you could say, article, but it says here, Major General Vasily Alexiev claimed that the Soviets had made contact with UFOs. And this is the gentleman right here, okay? Now, again, just by the looks of it, I know some of you are empathic and things like that. You can kind of get a feel for someone looking at their face and things like that. So, again, you could sort of see, with a little bit of intuition, this guy's been through quite a bit, right? But anyways, let's take a look here. He said that, and I quote, he said that UFOs appeared often on several military bases or any place where there is a high concentration of advanced science and, to some degree, danger, because every nuclear rocket, every new Air Force installation represents a breakthrough both in science and in military terms. All right. Now take a look at this. Moreover, he stated that the individual officers and commanders who knew about the phenomenon had no official guidelines or instruction on the matter, so they investigated it in their own way. This was in the case of within the Russian Federation, right? End quote. Whereas within the United States, it seemed as though they sort of made a very separate department, saying anyone at NORAD or the United States Air Force spotted any UFOs that they weren't supposed to report it to a separate department. Now, anyways, let's carry on to what Mr. Alexiev has claimed, and I quote, I know that in some places they even learned to create a situation which would deliberately provoke the appearance of a UFO. A UFO would appear where there was increased military activity connected, say, with the transportation of special loads. It was enough to artificially stimulate or schedule such a move for a UFO to appear, General Alexiev claimed, end quote. Again, very consistent with Lou Elizondo saying that he does know of operations of whether it's American, Russians, or Soviets, Chinese, you name it, trying to lure in these UFOs. With that being said, though, when we take a look here at how Mr. Alexiev claimed, used the word special when he said special loads, could mean reverse engineered alien tech, could mean alien tech from crash retrievals that they were not happy that humans obtained, or it could also mean very simply just, nuclear weapons or things like this. Anyways, take a look. And I quote, additionally, the Soviets learned to make contact with UFOs. According to him, the military personnel would move his hand in various directions, which caused the sphere UFO to flatten in the same direction. For example, if you raised your arm 3 times, the UFO would flatten out in a vertical direction 3 times as well. All right, end quote. Now, before I go on, I just want to say that Mr. Alexiev claimed that the way in which I guess you could say they contacted some of these civilizations, he said, according to him, was using mental telepathy similar to what we would know to be publicly as the CE5 protocols, not necessarily the exact protocols that Mr. Greer is advocating for, but more so that just the general concept of interfacing with consciousness, if you will. With that being said, he said that they had to tune their mind using no technology, no medicine, no chemicals to be inserted, simply tune the human brain to a particular, what he called, energy contour. Again, now after that, he did not go on to explain any further as to how to do it, because I think that honestly, if he explained how to do it, a lot of us could do it just blatantly that easily. Now again, it's possible that because C5 and things have come out, the NSA has prepared, certain UFOs manned by humans, or maybe not even manned at all, maybe just, AI controlled, to appear instead of actual aliens to prevent us regular folk from interacting with aliens, right? But anyways, let's take a look. And I quote, he blamed the politics for not letting an open invention into the undefined objects. I think that politics interfered with science here. Investigation of what was unidentified and not understood was carried out above all to clear matters up, he said. Anyways, end quote. And take a look at this. One of them telepathically made a contact with the ship and even was invited inside it, but he refused as he was afraid to enter the spaceship. Alexiev personally saw the drawings of the ship made by that officer. Soviet general believed that there are higher chances that UFOs are extraterrestrial or belong to other civilizations, end quote. Now again, we also have to understand that this is a general who may have not been privy to particularly the alien or UFO subject, but he was trusted well enough to understand certain things that occurred. Therefore, he knew how to sort of lure them in, if you will. Again, let's take a look at before we jump to the Lockheed X22A, let's jump over here to this article, sciphysics.com. And it's not necessarily the information within the article, but more so to show you folks how they're playing both sides against the middle. New study darkens hope for Earth-like planets. All right, this is sciphysics.com. This is not the only outlet that's reported this. You could just give it a quick Google, right? Now let's take a look at this. Phys.org, again, mainstream media websites. New class of habitable exoplanets represent a big step forward in the search for life. And both of these articles, by the way, folks, came out within the same 3-4 day time span of each other. What's going on here? Now, I get it. I understand that the official excuses, different institutions, different universities around the world are finding different results, studying different areas of the galaxy, relative to what they could see using their technology and things like this. But again, that's the legitimate excuse. The overall excuse or the overall reason is to insert into the subconscious playing both sides against the middle. Again, now let's take a look at this article right here by theguardian.com. What if it's too late to save our planet without geoengineering? Okay, again, you see what's happening here. There is a theory out there that these extraterrestrials are pushing humans, the human government, to disclose some form of existence very soon because apparently these extraterrestrials want to geoengineer the planet. Now, the question then becomes this: are they geoengineering the planet for their own purposes? Is some form of climate change legitimate, however, not in the way that we are presented publicly? Is it because, underground bases or underground civilizations, including these aquatic beings underwater and things like this, are trying to preserve their own, I guess you could say, regions, bases, forms, environments, if you will? There's so many things that are possible. Could it be that the extraterrestrials are using this sort of climate change crisis, if you will, to push for the disclosure of their particular species? Again, very difficult to say. But anyways, you see how they're playing both sides against the middle, right? Let's carry on. This is according to topsecretairplanes.blogspot.com. And again, I gotta say, you're not gonna find this type of information on a mainstream media website. But anyways, Lockheed has been working in the black on a discoid-shaped aircraft. Not only does this aircraft utilize anti-gravitic propulsion, but the discs are believed to be equipped with highly advanced particle beam weaponry. Lockheed does hold the patents on disc-shaped passenger aircraft, so it is not unreasonable to assume they have also successfully investigated the possibility of creating such craft as military platforms. Colonel Steve Wilson, United States Air Force, who is now deceased, stated that black military astronauts trained at a secret aerospace academy and later would operate out of Beale and Vandenberg Air Force bases in California, end quote. Before I go on, Don Phillips, if you take a look at what I posted on Instagram recently, said that there is a secret Air Force under a 3-letter name that he would not name, but it was under contract by, I think it was the CIA or the Air Force. There's a secret Air Force, basically, and this is the consistency is there in terms of these whistleblowers and what they're saying, right? Whether they're alive or dead at this point, it doesn't seem to make a difference. But anyways, from those bases, and I quote, "These military astronauts regularly fly trans-atmospherically and out into space. One of the aerospace craft they use," Colonel Wilson reported, "is the X-22A, Lockheed's 2-man anti-gravity disc craft. Evidence for the existence of this came to light during Operation Desert Storm, when American soldiers, and most likely Iraqi soldiers as well, made sightings of disc-shaped craft in the desert hovering near two U.S. officers. People also made claims of seeing these craft fire intense beams of light that remove any trace of what previously sat at that location, apart from a circular charcoal-like burn mark on the ground," end quote. Again, great to cover things up in terms of the evidence of war and things like that. You don't think they're using that right now, for example, in Afghanistan? I wouldn't rule it out. I doubt Biden even knows about it, but just to give you an idea, right? This is like the cleanup crew, if you want to call it, right? So take a look. A Desert Storm soldier stated the following: "In the first days, film footage and especially video cams, which a large number of GIs had, were impounded so they wouldn't capture any sensitive material." Okay, Dr. Richard Boylan states the following about the X-22A. "The described disc was clearly an anti-gravity levitating aerial weapons platform in the U.S. arsenal, possibly a Lockheed X-22A 2-man discoid craft, the real DARKSTAR," which, by the way, folks, quickly, we'll be doing an episode on that shortly, "of which the unnamed drone X-22 DARKSTAR is a front-cover aircraft program to disguise the manned anti-gravity fighter disc. Further, it appears that the real DARKSTAR manned disc come equipped with the latest neutral particle beam weapons, which take apart the target at the molecular level." All right, ET craft do not incinerate humans. Only human military fighters are so deployed. So this report does not deal with any extraterrestrial event. All right. And it has been said that if the American people knew what the military had in their arsenal today, they wouldn't believe it and would think someone was fantasizing about a George Lucas Star Wars movie episode. End quote. So again, folks, take a look at these videos right here. Some of them still on YouTube. Again, a lot of the Boyd Bushman interviews have been removed and things like that. But what I want to analyze here is something called lifters using anti-gravity and pushing the ionosphere downwards. Again, I'm not an expert in the science of all this, but again, just goes to show you, this is a person who is able to do this in their home. So again, the physics is there. It's not like it isn't, right? We see this and we see that the physics is there. So you might be saying, okay, Dave, why do you bring all of this up? Well, let's take a look at this right here. Defense1.com. U.S. Navy will upgrade warships to add unnamed space capabilities. Everything is classified when it comes to space, one admiral complained. All right? End quote. Look, this is basically throwing in our face that saying, to the world, not even just the American people or the people of the West, to the whole world, you idiots, we've had these weapons, and the fact that you don't believe that we've had them just goes to show the success in which our dissemination of propaganda has worked over many, many years. That's essentially what this article is telling us, right? Okay, again, I'm very concerned about this, and the reason why I say that is because we see articles like this, and then if we jump on over to this right here, projects.iq.harvard.edu, the Galileo Project, right? For those who don't know, very quickly, a researcher and scientist by the name of Avi Loeb, hopefully I pronounced his name correctly, recently announced the Galileo Project, and they just recently tweeted out that they are getting some very high-tech IR sensors to look into space to see if they see anything. The reason I bring this up, guys, in correspondence with this U.S. Navy article is because I think the U.S. Navy is bringing this out now, or the Air Force, or you name it, whatever department, because the Galileo Project will find things, and so they're going to have to excuse it as human military classified aircraft, and then they will probably make the Galileo Project sign some type of non-disclosure agreement that we'll find out, 10, 20 years from now happened, and then it'll just keep repeating that type of cycle. I don't see this as a coincidence, folks. I really don't. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. I could be wrong, right? Now, the final thing I want to take a look at here, too, is this right here, timefordisclosure.com. A declassified Australian UFO report involves cat-faced and dwarf aliens. Now, end quote. Before I go on, we will be analyzing in the Patreon members episodes some footage that was recently leaked, I believe as of today or last night, on the gray area of the internet, having to do with a mushroom-shaped UFO, which, as has been described here in this declassified Australian UFO report, except in this particular footage, you can see the craft pretty damn clearly. It literally looks like a jellyfish in air. It's got the tentacles, you name it, right? Or some type of octopus, if you want to call it. More so jellyfish, mushroom-shaped kind of thing. Now, the interesting thing, though, is that you then have the consistency of the confirmation, but from two individual and separate sources. I say sources carefully because, again, Australia is so tied in with the States on a militaristic, geopolitical, financial level. It's basically one and the same in terms of that imperialistic mindset and I guess you could say dominatory goal and objectives, if you will, right? With that being said, you see what the U.S. is doing. They're getting countries like Australia, France to, declassify some documents on the more crazy things. I say crazy with air quotes. But now what they're doing is and then the U.S. is saying, they're basically calling the shots from my understanding, and they're saying, listen, we shared this tech with you guys. You may have found some stuff on your own, but maybe the Russians are and the Chinese are the leaders in this. I would even say the U.S. more than anyone else really are the leaders in this technology. You will do what we say with regards to disclosure, declassification. You will put out the more, I guess you could say, crazy documents, if you want to call it, or documents of more speculative, harder to believe stories and occurrences and interactions, right? Whereas the U.S. will put out the more believable stuff. So, with that being said, I'd like you folks to let me know what you think. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. I really think that we can really find some very deep connections here, and we will catch all of you very, very soon. Cheers.